After nearly 2 decades of paranormal research, we are constantly faced with a supernatural theme, a reoccurring ghostly chorus that cannot be ignored, and it's that the heart of many hauntings are deeply rooted in familial connections. It's our pursuit of this persistent trend that compels us to delve into the phenomena of those visited by their departed loved ones.
I went to bed for the night, everything was kind of calm and quiet, and I thought I had a bad dream. I woke up in the middle of the night and watched what I thought was my dad come from our basement steps up onto the couch where I was sleeping and sit down beside me, pat my leg, get back up, and go right back down the basement.
I did a little bit of research into your family.
I have something I'd like to show you.
In this episode of Family Spirits, Brandi shares how on the day of her father's cremation, her family witnessed a series of inexplicable occurrences that persisted long after his passing. The nature of this paranormal activity suggests that although Brandi's father was no longer physically present, the echoes of his spirit reverberated in her home.
My name's Brandi Gray. I'm from Corbin, Kentucky, and I'm here to tell you my experiences with the paranormal. So my first experience happened when I was 4 years old. At the time, we lived in a quaint 2-bedroom house, very small, cozy, and comfy. I went to bed for the night, everything was kind of calm and quiet, and I thought I had a bad dream. I woke up in the middle of the night and watched what I thought was my dad come from our basement steps up onto the couch where I was sleeping and sit down beside me, pat my leg, get back up, and go right back down the basement. Being a child, I just thought maybe, figments of my imagination or whatever. Things were not as they seemed. I became frantic at that point. I hollered for my mom. My mom had came out of the bedroom, which was in complete eye view. Come to find out it was not my dad. She had picked me up and took me into the bedroom where he was still sound asleep. I thought my dad was sick or something was wrong. He was very pale looking, which wasn't the norm for my dad. My dad was very dark complected. So I was just kind of confused and then scared because I had no clue what just happened. It really concerned my mom that I was very adamant that what I saw was not a dream, that it was definitely my dad, although she had shown me otherwise. So I had went to school the very next day. Everything was kind of panned out, but it bothered her so much that she had actually told my dad about what happened. He had never told my mom that he had lost a brother. So at that time is when he told my mom that he had had a brother that had passed away when they were younger. And that's when I found out that that was actually my uncle that I had seen. So when I came home from school the next day, my dad had this gigantic picture frame. I walk into the house and immediately I seen it, and the realization, and I was like, that's who I seen, and I had picked out my uncle. The man that had came from the basement was my uncle. My dad was very private when it came to emotional mannerisms, very guarded. He didn't speak about them. And so when we found out that who I had seen was my uncle, I think that was one of the first times I'd ever seen my dad cry. My uncle was the one to help raise him when they were growing up, but that's, like I said, emotional matters he didn't talk about.
Now, Brandi's story is kind of one of a father's love, right? I've never seen someone so deeply connected to their father the way Brandi was. I mean, just the way she talked about him, the way he was in his everyday life, and how much admiration she had for the guy, still to this day.
Kind of the saddest but most relatable part of her story to me that I heard was she said when we initially talked to her that she felt like, you know, she almost passed out when she heard the news.
I think this is about as close to a classic case of a family haunting as you'll ever hear. The paranormal claims that they were experiencing fits the personality.
My dad had a nickname that he gave to all of us, and so I took pride in that. I was definitely Daddy's girl. Dad played pranks all the time. Halloween was his favorite holiday. I kind of took after that just a little bit. I can remember him throwing the breakers in the house and popping out of the corners and scaring us, or have some type of weird mask on and freaking us out. That was just like the highlight of his days. I lost my dad when I was 16 years old. I was in high school. A couple weeks before his passing, I had a dream that we were all involved in a car accident and my dad had passed away from it. Ironically, my mom had a similar incident. Hers was more along deja vu, and actually dreamed of the incidents that she had to walk up on.
My name's Jeremy Gray. I'm here with my wife, Brandi Gray. She spoke about, you know, some things that happened, you know, younger in her life with her dad that kind of opened her eyes to the paranormal. It kind of made me think of things that happened when I was younger also that, you know, I had experienced that, you know, was just kind of brushed off as my imagination. But yeah, her telling me her story kind of gave me a different perspective on the paranormal.
I had went to school, it was a normal day. I had just had a gut feeling that something bad was gonna happen. School went great, so by the time I got home, I was like, it's just my feelings, whatever. Dad was supposed to be at the house to pick us up, to take us down to the farm. And 4 o'clock, 4:30 rolled around and he still hadn't showed up, and we had received a phone call from the house that was on the farm, that landline. And there was a lady on the phone that was just frantic that I needed to get a hold of my mom. I had tried several times to get a hold of my mom and none of my phone calls went through. It was a very long day. By the time that my mom had got home, my grandparents had came and picked us up in the meantime. And by the time that she had gotten home, it was around midnight. And we had learned that my dad had passed away with a pulmonary embolism. Sorry. The night that my dad passed away, we had went down to the farm. We were just kind of gathering things and making sure everything, the animals were took care of, everything was took care of. And I had a dream, and it was my dad. The brightest, whitest light that I could ever see. But I could still see like the shadow of my dad. I knew it was my dad. And he had come to me and he told me that things were gonna be okay, he was okay, and to take care of my mom.
Brandi's experience with what happened to her with kind of the paranormal things that happened, that's brought me and her together more, because I had things happen to me when I was younger that, you know, we can more talk about and relate to, and kind of just make me feel comfortable talking about, you know, things that I went through.
The grieving process, the upheaval in our lives, because it was one day there and the next day gone. We hadn't really noticed anything. It was just kind of normal up until the day that he was cremated. And then the day that he was cremated, things started ramping up. His cell phone that was completely dead had went off. My mom's cell phone had lit up like it was fireworks, ironically, at the same time that my dad was being placed at the crematorium. We would hear his truck pull in the driveway. We would hear the truck door slam. his big old mud-clotted boots up on the porch. We could watch the doorknob move and the bells that were around our doorknob jingle. Some way that we knew it was just him. Those experiences led me into searching for answers for what really happens after we die. And then when I felt comfortable enough, I started asking questions in my own home. I actually wanted my mom to sit with me because I believe me and my mom felt a lot alike, that what we were experiencing was maybe just what grief had done. So we were sitting in the hallway. I had a spirit box and a K2 meter. We had flipped the breakers to the house. And in that little hallway section that led to all of our bedrooms, that was where we found that there wasn't any like electrical occurrences or anything. It's where my K2 meter stayed green, had no spikes, no nothing. And we start asking questions, you know, and I didn't expect to kind of get anything at first. I was just kind of, you know, if it happens, it happens. And after maybe 20, 30 minutes of sitting there, all of a sudden my K2 meter spiked and it went all the way up to red. And I started asking, you know, Dad, if that's you, let us know. And then my spirit box started. And at first it was a hello, and then we heard main squeeze. And that was it. That was my dad. That was my dad letting us know that he was with us.
Hi, Brandi. I'm Craig.
It's nice to meet you.
Well, thanks for sharing your stories with us. Now, this house, where was this house?
This house was, it was out what we consider South 11 in Barberville. It was Lake Hollow. It was actually named after my great-grandfather, so.
Your great-grandfather being Homer Lake?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I see the connection now. The cemetery is close by the house.
Yes, the cemetery is located literally like right on the mountaintop, and we lived below the mountain.
And your family is buried in that cemetery?
Mm-hmm. Yep. My aunt, one of my cousins, Uncle Jack is buried up there, and my dad has his own little spot up there too.
Really? So your dad and his brother are both buried
Yep.
on the hill, and then the house is below. And the house was built by your great-grandfather,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
I did do a little bit of research. It's very hard to research family members in small hamlets in the Appalachia because there wasn't just a lot of news and records to choose from. But I did find a few things that I would like to share with you. Let's start with your father, your dad. His history. His name was James Michael. He went by Jimmy. Mm-hmm. And he was born September 9th, 1955. Mm-hmm. He was born in Lima, Ohio.
Yep.
And his grandparents were Homer and Della Lake. Mm-hmm. And Homer lived from 1904 to 1988. So he passed 2 years after he built that house that you grew up in as a child. Your dad, of course, had a brother, which we'll be talking about. Randall was his name.
Yep.
And in fact, we'll just talk a little bit about him. Randall Scott Tuttle Lake was his name. I found your great-grandfather's obit, and he died at the age of 83. Ernest Homer Lake of Little Poplar Creek, a retired miner. So he worked as a miner.
I didn't know
You
that.
did not know that. And said husband of Della Lake, died Friday at Valley Park Convalescent Center. Did your dad have a good relationship with him? Was it spotty? I got the impression that there might have been friction.
I really don't know. All I know is that my uncle was really the one who who helped raise my dad.
So you never knew that your great-grandfather worked in a mine? So you would have no idea what kind of mine it might be?
Nope.
Are there any mines going on in
There's
Barberville?
all kinds of strip jobs and mines. They're everywhere.
So it could be coal, it could be a number of different mines.
Coal would be the biggest one. That's really what our area is known for.
I'm leaving this with you.
Okay.
Now I'm looking at the 1950 census, and it doesn't show that Homer, your great-grandfather, worked as a miner. It says he was working as a farmer.
We had a farm.
So you did have
We did have a farm.
did have a farm. I'm going to pass this along to you as well. I can continue looking into Homer now that I know that you don't know that much about him. I could probably find a few more records of him. I found your story fascinating on a number of levels. From a historian to also a paranormal investigator as well. Having a house so close to the family plot is one. Having a great-grandfather that was so prominent in Barberville that they actually named a street after him. It makes a little bit more sense why your Uncle Jack would come and visit, being that he was close to your dad.
Right.
And also, his final resting place is not terribly far away.
No.
So it was just like just making a little neighborly visit. When your dad passed away, however, was it at the same house or was it at a different
No,
house?
it was the same house.
The same house?
Yeah. We actually had moved out to 229 so us girls could have our own bedrooms because our house was very small. Dad had planned on whenever he had stopped traveling, he was going to add on to that house so we could all be back down on the farm, and that never got started. So, but no, he was at the farm when he died. He, like I said, he had a pulmonary embolism, so when that blood clot through, it just where he was at was where he was at. The night before he died, he had actually told my mom that he had talked to some people and they were getting ready to start tearing down the house and re-adding so we could all be there.
I see. Part of me is thinking, is he kind of pulling the pranks from beyond a little bit too?
I think so.
And it also sounded like he was kind of set in his ways a bit.
Very much so. I get my stubbornness from my daddy.
Yeah.
The sound of his truck, I mean, we heard it, it was like clockwork. As soon as we would come in from school, it wouldn't be too much longer, we would hear the truck. His phone went off every morning at 6:30, and that's when he would get up to get us girls up if he was at home. If he was at home, he took us to school. I guess he just enjoyed doing that where he didn't get to do it a whole lot, and then the other weeks mom would do it.
So did it last for weeks? Did it last for months?
I know it was still happening when I moved out of the house.
And when was that? How old were you?
I was 18.
You were 18 when you moved out?
Yeah. My little sister lived there up until about 3 years ago, and she said there was still some things going on.
Well, it certainly sounded like he believed you when you told the story about encountering.
Very much so, especially after I was so adamant that it was him.
And was able to identify that photo.
Yeah.
And whatever you said triggered something very emotional in him that brought it out. Now, did he try to hide his tears from you as crying?
Oh yeah, he walked away. He walked away. He walked into the kitchen. There's only been one other time I've seen my dad cry. We were involved in just a small car accident, and it had fractured his ribs, and it's the only other time I've seen my dad cry. There's more that goes on. It's not just closing shut of we die in judgment, so.
Do you think that his passing and the phenomena actually brought you all together closer?
Yes. The grieving process hit us all very, very hard. I think I was the one that was more emotional about it. My mom distracted herself with us kids and work. The fact that we all three had the same experiences and different ones, that really made us bond. It was us three girls from then on out.
Your dad's presence and his continuing presence is his way of both kind of having fun with you and at the same time saying, hey, remember this?
Yeah.
Remember? And also his way of saying, I'm watching your back.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me talk about him. I know I talk about him all the time, but to let him know that like we haven't forgotten. We'll never forget. We love him. So I'll always be his baby.
Overwrought with grief, Brandi's longing to reunite with her father manifested in physical, paranormal phenomena. These visitations were a necessary comfort in the wake of a deep sadness.
What I would tell somebody if they had experienced anything similar to what I've had, or had thought that they had experienced something through the grief process, is to trust their gut instinct, not to necessarily think that it's all in their head or a figment of their imagination, but to search for answers.